Israel is doing everything it can to prevent civilian deaths. Hamas is doing everything it can to guarantee civilian deaths.
Who are the good guys? Is it Israel or Hamas? Maybe they're all bad. Check out this clip of Andrew Fox, who is a military expert, explaining why Hamas are the bad guys and Israel are the good guys.
Thanks. Here's a comment and a question. Thanks for explaining the principle of proportionality so clearly. Leaders in Norway seem to think that proportionality is a numbers game. What would you say to the largest labor union in Norway that accused Israel of genocide this week?
Look, genocide hinges on one thing and one thing alone, and that's the intent to commit the crime. Okay, it's called dolus specialis, and it sits far above the usual burden of proof in a criminal case. Okay, if you or I get arrested and we go to court, the burden of proof on the prosecution will be beyond reasonable doubt. Okay, have you done this crime beyond reasonable doubt? The burden of proof for genocide is absolute. It can be nothing else for it to be genocide. And for that, you normally need to show some kind of a plan. Think of the Wannsee conference in Germany when they planned the Holocaust. Nothing like that remotely exists in Gaza. And if you look at South Africa's submission for the intent, they've cherry-picked a bunch of speeches. They even cite one President Herzog speech and then leave out the bit where in the very next clause in the sentence, he goes on to say that they're targeting Hamas. It's disingenuous. I think Iran have had far more to do with that ICJ case than is publicly known. I suspect some money has gone the ANC's way in South Africa, if I were a betting man. But not even the conduct matches genocide. There's 5 different conditions, killing, injuring, and a few others that not even Israel's critics accuse them of, quite frankly. And the fact that Israel has pumped 3,000 calories per day into Gaza during the course of the war, the fact that Israel has created humanitarian zones, set up 11 different field hospitals in Gaza, provided electricity and water, and all of it's been nicked by Hamas. I think every bit of evidence that sits around this points to the exact opposite of it being a genocide, but the most important part is that there's no intent here at all. And that's absolutely clear from everything I've seen in every IDF headquarters I've been in for the last year or so.
So we hear almost daily about things happening in Gaza and Israel in Norwegian media, but we haven't heard about your report in Norwegian media. Why do you think it is so?
Well, perhaps they haven't heard of the Henry Jackson Society, which is entirely possible. But my paper in December got over 200 million impressions on social media. I did media in over 20 countries. And it got some pretty high-level reporting in the UK and the Telegraph and various other mainstream news outlets. But look, I'm not going to change the narrative single-handedly. I can't compete with the UN or Amnesty International. The approach I've always taken is that I write these papers for people to read and use. So if people aren't doing that, then I've not done my job. But I've certainly seen people like Jonathan Conricus on Piers Morgan using it. I've seen other people in interviews in the UK using it, and that's what it's designed for. And all we can do is just keep telling the truth. I think when the dust settles in Gaza and all of this is over and the narrative is finished, my main effort, I think, is to make sure that I can look myself in the mirror and know that I spoke the truth with integrity, and that's what I try to do. And I think if you can all try and do the same, then it means we're all saying the same messaging, and hopefully that will have some traction with our friends and family, and then at least at a sort of silent majority level, then we'll have won. That's, I think, the best we can do in the face of a media that is now set on a trend, it's set on a narrative, and it's not going to change it for love or money, unfortunately.
Thank you. And the next one here is, why is the information that you have provided regarded as nothing but Israeli propaganda and false?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm not Israeli, so I don't know why I would be pushing Israeli propaganda. Look, I've worked very hard to maintain my financial integrity. My last trip to Israel, the government offered to pay. The Ministry of Diaspora Affairs offered to pay, and I refused because I don't take government money. And the reason you can believe what I'm saying is because it's all evidenced. The 2 papers I've put forward, there's footnotes, there's referencing, it's been peer-reviewed academically by a doctor of statistics. My second paper was peer-reviewed by a professor of war studies at the Royal Military Academy, Sandhurst. There are 264 footnotes. You're very welcome to check any one of those 264 if you don't believe me. I mean, it's an academic piece of work. It's been validated. I'm confident in it. And I urge you to read it and make up your own minds. See if you believe me or not.
Great, thanks. Here is, in Norway we hold the UN to high esteem. And the UN estimates that 70% of Gaza's infrastructure is damaged or destroyed, which some interpret as evidence of Israel's deliberate intent. How would you respond to that claim?
Well, I would refer you to my second paper that was published last week and my explanation for why that infrastructure is damaged. It's damaged because Hamas have used it for military purposes. And I don't think it's impossible to overstate the scale of which they've booby-trapped the entire place. Honestly, in Rafah, every other building was booby-trapped. Every other building, every other house had a tunnel shaft with a booby trap in it. And I've seen the evidence of that with my own eyes. And it's because they saw how the IDF operated in Gaza City in the north, where the IDF was clearing buildings as they went through the city. And they targeted that IDF tactic. So they said, if they're going into buildings, well, let's booby-trap the buildings. And they had 4 months to do it because Biden made the IDF stop for 4 months. So they had 4 months to essentially rig the whole of Rafah into one gigantic booby trap that the IDF then had to fight through. Okay, and that's why 70% of buildings are destroyed. It's because every building is used by Hamas. There's a 500-kilometer-long tunnel network underneath every building in Gaza. Like I said, there's two options when your enemy does that. You either don't fight at all, or you fight the way the IDF has. And after 7 October, they had no choice but to do what they've done.
Many Norwegians say that, or in the media, that Hamas numbers have proved to be reliable in previous conflicts. What is your comment?
Yeah, they have. In terms of overall total, there or thereabouts, they've been okay. 2 points to note. Firstly, they get externally validated in every other conflict. They're not externally validated in this conflict. But the other thing, they always omit combatant deaths. Okay, we even found information from 2014 where on Facebook, Hamas were ordering Gazan civilians to conceal combatant deaths. Don't write about your family on social media if they're a martyr, if they're a shaheed, if they're a mujahid. Okay, they have very clear strategy to conceal this. And so whilst the overall total is generally there or thereabouts correct, they never ever declare combatant totals. And in previous conflicts, the combatant totals have always broadly matched IDF estimates. Okay, so that's the lie when people say Hamas have always been accurate in the past. Okay, that's the cunning lie hidden away in that question. Yes, they're accurate, but they never tell you how many of their own soldiers have died until after the war.
Right, and here's the last question. There are quite a few people here in Norway that think that Hamas and the IDF are morally equivalent, that both lie, manipulate, and do everything they can to win the war. What's your best response to such an argument?
There are two things I would draw out, and the first one is 7th of October. Now, there is an infamous 47-minute video that details what went on that day. I'm unfortunate enough to have seen that. I'm also unfortunate to have seen quite a bit more evidence above and beyond that as well, including the evidence of sexual assault. And as always happens when I have to discuss it, the hair on my arms is starting to stand up. It is the single most horrific thing I could ever imagine, never mind actually see. If you really want to know what that includes, come and find me afterwards. But it is beyond bad. I genuinely don't have the words to describe to you how horrific it was what Hamas did on 7th of October. There is nothing the IDF has done in Gaza that comes remotely close to that unspeakable horror on 7th of October. So that's the first thing. And the second point I would answer in reply to that question is I talked extensively about the human sacrifice strategy. That's the difference. Israel is doing everything it can to prevent civilian deaths. Hamas is doing everything it can to guarantee civilian deaths. They're sacrificing their own children for their political ends. There is no moral equivalence whatsoever between Hamas and Israel. Next.
Great, thank you so much. Give him a good applause.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Here's a small gift from us.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. So
Real pleasure. Thank you.
The craziest thing is they state this. It's not like they're trying to hide it. They're very open about the fact that, just the other day, I think a Hamas official was like, "We need your blood. We need your children and your sons and your daughters. We want them. We want them to be martyrs." And again, they are an Islamic to the extreme, to the highest extreme. And so, they believe in martyrdom. They believe in, going to the beautiful land of milk and honey after they die with 72 virgins. And it's a real thing. It's not like they don't believe it. They actually do believe it. And it's hard to wrap your head around it because, a lot of secular people, a lot of atheists are like, "But do they really believe that?" People in the West are like, "Really? They really think that if they blow up a bus, they're going to go to heaven?" Yeah, they sort of do. And there's enough people that have done it to show that they do. For more, subscribe to the channel. If you want to help us make more of these videos, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/JewishUncensored. Thank you for watching and have a good one.